It's that timeless pursuit of when art merges with the artist, where we put ourselves out there, find that moment of motivation, and ride the momentum, and then love the very art we create. These are all deeply linked to the soul of who we are. Some say you might be able to measure that, but perhaps it is a blind pursuit. Yes, hello everybody. Welcome to 21 Grams. I am your host, Joe Compton. It's so nice to see you. Nice to have you here. And it's amazingly awesome to have my guest tonight. I'm real excited about. She and I have been friends for quite a bit of time, and I maybe we've done this once or twice before. Maybe I don't know that we've ever had a one-on-one interview, though. I'm not sure.
I don't think we have. I think it's always some situation where you're either running tech for somebody else's show, or I'm on a panel for one of your shows, or you run tech for one of my shows.
So this is going to be great. So of course, I'm speaking with Tonya Todd, and Miss Tonya Todd, I love to open this up. Always the first thing I love to have you do is just kind of give everybody a little introduction of yourself and who you are and what you do, and let the world know about you.
Well, meow, for starters. I am an author, actress, activist, filmmaker, baby cosplayer, and just kind of a nerd.
That's awesome. I love it. Nice and succinct. We have Anita here. We have Tiffany here. Hello, everybody. Welcome. You're in for a treat. I really would love to talk about what you're doing right now, because I think right now you're in a different space than I think you've ever been in your creative career. And so, you're putting together, you've put together this podcast that you've run for like the last year and a half. And then you have the book that is based upon the podcast that you've been running. And then you're putting monthly live events together based on that with a couple of other author friends of yours. So talk about this evolution and why this project is so special to you, and what it means to you, because I have a feeling that this is a labor, for the lack of a better word, of love.
So 52 Love started, I did a blog series in 2020, and I was really just trying to make myself write regularly, get in the habit of having the habit of putting myself out in the world. You have to expose yourself when you're a new artist and deal with people seeing your work. And that's scary. It's especially scary when you're new, but I mean, it's never not scary. You're opening yourself up for criticism, for critique, and, just negativity. And so you bare your soul. And I needed to get in the habit of exposing myself to that. I mean, not danger, but vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And so I had to come up with a topic that I cared enough about that I would have a lot to say about it. There were things that I was trying to blog about, like movie reviews, and I love movies, but I don't like writing about movies. I thought I would. I'm very opinionated, but when it came time to sit down and write movie reviews, I didn't want it to feel like a job. I don't know. Okay, so I have these thoughts, and I'd find myself writing notes, and I loved watching the movies, but it was taking too much time away from my fiction writing, and I wasn't enjoying it. It felt like I was working way too hard on a report. And so I stopped doing that, which is a shame, because I really did enjoy the movies that I was watching, but it just wasn't bringing me artistic joy. But love is something that is universal. It transcends time. And I gave myself the homework assignment of putting out one blog post per week, but it was going to be maybe 600 to 1,000 words, not something that is going to make me feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to create this week? And I also had my critique group help, because I would have that to submit every week to, to workshop it with them. I didn't just want this to be my off the cuff thoughts. I wanted to put something beautiful out in the world and actually help people. So I was in the habit of doing that. It's 2020. And, we hit a bit of a bump worldwide in 2020. And around, like it was around June, I just had to, I almost quit because, okay, so I've developed this habit, but the world is on fire again, apparently. But, at the time, it was just so much is going wrong. And with the George Floyd thing in June, that's where I was like, what am I doing? All of these things are happening and I'm writing about love. Like, why? And it's like the universe heard me. God was listening, and I started getting people messaging me and sending me comments on the blog site and emailing me just out of the blue when I didn't make any public announcement about this, just thanking me for writing this blog so that they had something positive to look forward to. And it was a similar message from all of these different people. Some didn't even know each other, so it made no sense. Some of them were not even in relationships. These are blog tips that improve the intimacy in your relationship. But they were still reading it and they were looking forward to it. So that was my sign. Keep going. Keep putting something out in the world that makes people feel a little less scared and a little less alone. And by the end of 2020, I ended up signing with an agent to put out a book for 52 Love. And by 2021, we had, to improve the platform for it. We already had the blog, which was completed in 2020. The very next week, I started putting out one podcast per week where I invited someone to come on the show. They had tried one of the tips with their partner, and they talk about how it went with their partner. And then they would talk about their creative projects, because I like to share awesome creative people in the world like you do. And that actually ended at the end of 20, because it's 52 tips. I spent 52 weeks doing it. And I don't remember when I actually signed the contract for the book, but it's here.
It's right behind you there on your shoulder there, which is awesome. It's very fascinating. I have to imagine either one of two things happened. Either you had the 78 tips and you had to cut it to 52, or you had 49 tips and you had to create 3 more. 52. You don't have to tell me which one it is, but I'm curious. Were there a few? How did you determine which 52 you were going to go in? And was there a rhyme or reason that you kind of developed through that process that you knew this was going to be number 1 and this was going to be number 52?
It was a mixture of that, because before I even did the first one, it was, okay, well, let me make sure I can even come up with ideas for this. And I just, right off the bat, wrote down like 21 to 23 tips, somewhere in there. After I really started going, I realized some of these are kind of similar. So that's why I say 21 to 23, because I feel like it was really only 21, but at the time I wrote down 23. But as I went along, I'm always brainstorming. I'm researching, reviewing other books. I learned so many tips from characters that I was writing in my stories. I'd be writing a fictional scene and be like, oh, good idea, character. I'm stealing that from my other project. Because my characters talk to me. I cannot take credit for a lot of what happens in those stories. And some of the stuff I would never think of. It's like, how is it possible that I'm the one who wrote this when this is not the way my brain works? That's the way somebody else's brain works. I just don't understand how it came out of me. It's like I was just a vessel for their brainstorming. And then one of the tips was like, no, this is a terrible thing. I would never do this. And my character convinced me and made it romantic. So, all right, you convinced me. I'll put it in the book. And pretty much that's how it went. I've had people in my life who maybe inspired the tips, my own personal experience, family members who have told me about something they did, just not because of the blog series, but they were just sharing something that they did. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. I would like to steal that for my blog, you know? And the one who inspired me with one really amazing tip ended up being the person who came on the podcast for that particular tip, so that she could share how that came about. Like, who better to tell the origin story for that than the person who shared it with me.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that kismet. I love it. It's really fascinating because there's something about the universal language of love and love itself that does bring about a lot of cosmic spiritual essence.
Agreed.
First go right,
Yeah.
and so it's very fascinating to find these intricate little things that you can do to enhance that or change your philosophies, right? Or to maybe help you go further in your own life. And I'm wondering for you what it did for you writing these things. Was there a kismet effect, cumulative effect for you in writing these 52 tips? Did you find your life was changing or that love was opening up or something was, you were feeling something a lot different after doing this exercise?
Yeah, definitely. When you put yourself in that space, you are opening yourself up to giving and receiving more love, and not necessarily just with your partner, it's with the people that you meet. Because one of the things I've learned is not everyone gives and receives love in the same way. And maybe they don't recognize something as a loving gesture because it's just not how they function. So one of the tips is about learning what your love language is, because it helps you to be more effective at communicating that love to others. If that makes sense. It's like, I for years thought that one of my family members, and I don't want to call them out because, they're still part of my family. I felt that like this person didn't care about me as a child. I felt like this person didn't care about me in life. And after reading the 5 love languages, I discovered they were just loving me in their language, not mine. All these things that they kept giving me and doing for me that I didn't want, that was their way of trying to express love. But I was, I'm an acts of service and quality time person, and I was getting lots of gifts and hugs, And there's nothing wrong with those things, but they weren't what I needed,
Yeah.
I mean, so it's good to know. It's good to know the love languages. And then also, if you understand that you don't normally receive in that way, but you recognize that someone is still doing these other ways, you gather that it is an expression of love. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can start the conversation about how I appreciate that you're doing this, and I will try to do more of that for you. But it would make me feel more loved if you would maybe incorporate this sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And Tiffany says, so true. We all love differently. It's hard to understand. It's hard to understand the others. I don't. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very, and a lot of people don't know their own love language. I think sometimes too, they get confused by it, and then they compromise or they try to force it, and it doesn't. And that's when it doesn't work, right? It's like square peg, round hole, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is fascinating on its own too. But writing about love too is there's a tightrope you have to walk in a lot of respects because, not only because of the love language aspects of things, but because of that we all love differently too, and that mm-hmm. we're all humans having an experience, and love is a part of that experience, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your experience is universal to anybody else's experience, right? very
Like
different.
love is universal, but the way you process and receive and give love, that is not universal. Like we're individuals, we're unique.
Who you
And there are
love
going
too,
to be combinations.
right? Yeah, and who you love too is another interesting aspect of that too.
Right.
Uh, you, putting this together is a technical process. You know, a nonfiction versus fiction. Fiction has a flow to it. It has a universal opportunity to kind of go three acts. And you're a film person, so I can wax poetic with you on three act structure and
Right.
all. But you know, but putting was that a challenge for you at all? Did you find that was an interesting exercise for you to kind of be more in your analytical brain than in maybe in your creative space? I know there's creativity involved with creating the process, and this is a narrative into itself, but it is a different way to tell a narrative, right? So I'm wondering how much of that you struggled with and how much of it did you find was very similar to any other creative process that you have.
I wouldn't say it was a struggle per se. It is a shift though. You do have to shift your mindset. And I will say that when I'm creative, I have typos and misspellings and just terrible sentence structure. That part of my brain just does not work properly.
Yeah.
But I am also an editor. That is something that I do. So I'll go back switching my brain like and go, how did I write this convoluted sentence? Like, what was I even trying to say here? Why are there commas just everywhere? You know? So I'm grateful that I have that analytical brain, and I'm really good at scheduling, and I'm good at remembering things from calendars. So one of the things that I did was consider holidays or the season, things that were coming up as I was incorporating what was going to be part of the tip. And I know that the seasons aren't necessarily the same everywhere, but at least in America, that was the best I could do. One of the tips is voting together, but voting doesn't necessarily happen at the same time of year.
No.
For all countries. So I just had to make a call on those, and that one's going in November.
Even New Year's doesn't happen for all countries the same time
right
either, which is interesting too. Yeah. I mean, and there's different, it's funny because like, you have obviously you have the big one, February, Valentine's Day, and that love language there, and then of course Christmas brings a different kind of family love language to it. A little bit more of sweetness, added to that aspect of the love language too. But it's seasons do the same, right? Winter's a little bit more cozy, summer's a little bit more precocious, right? So, but again, Australia, when we're experiencing winter, it's summertime in Australia, right? So it's
right.
Like, give me something.
And the other thing is, I was writing some of this during the pandemic, so I had no way of knowing whether people were ever going to be outside of their homes again. So
right.
If you read the original blog posts, a lot of them are saying, now keep in mind, only do this if it's safe to go outdoors. By the time the book came out, I had to remove all of that language because it just was no longer relevant. But, things like dress up at home, have your own intimate dinner dressed up at home. I stand by that, whether we're in a pandemic or not.
Yeah.
But it was definitely inspired by what was happening.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because then, you can apply a lot of stuff even now to that aspect of it. I think probably even more so now because I think people are a little bit more weary to go out, even still a little bit, right? So, I mean, now people are doing it, but it's like we're almost, pretty much back to the normal cycle beforehand. But it is interesting that some people are incorporating what they've experienced during the pandemic into what they do on a normal basis. So,
and again, when I was writing it originally, I didn't have a book in mind. I was not like I definitely did not see myself as being a nonfiction writer. And now my first two big publications are nonfiction books. You never know what your journey is going to be like. I have
you never know.
Novel on submission, another one. I'm making revisions with my agent right now. But these two were able to you know, they were born, or like they were started later, but they were born earlier.
How much of you know, being an actor and being out there and putting yourself out there has given you the confidence to put yourself out there in your fiction as or in your writing? You know, are you a little bit more a little bit more I don't want to say confident, but I want to say like you know a little bit more brash about putting yourself out there. You're not as fearful of what might be said to you if you put yourself out there and it doesn't come back the way you want it to.
I'm certainly braver because of it. I mean, it's
Mhm.
definitely
Braver,
affected
that's
me.
the word I was looking for.
For one, when you're sharing your work, you are slicing yourself open and exposing yourself to the world for their judgment. And
Yeah.
it hurts, like it does. And even the fear of it can be debilitating, you know, like I used to shake and just tremble when I was trying to read my work. The
Hmm.
first time I was gifted with a public reading, like I was not published yet, but my story was chosen for this thing called Painted Stories, where
Mm.
you read your story and an artist actually paints the scene while you're doing it. So it was this really cool program. And I
Nice.
was terrified to read it in public. So I drew on my acting and I went as my character. I just, I dressed as the character and I showed up, and you know what? She's not worried about any of these people. Who are they? And it worked. My legs were trembling beneath my dress the entire time, and nobody knew.
That's
And now
awesome.
that's
I
not
love
a thing anymore. Like I don't have that kind of terror anymore when I'm
that. Sure.
reading my work. I'm not saying I don't get nervous, but it
Yeah.
isn't terrifying anymore. In any situation where I am worried about something like that, I can
Mhm.
draw from either a character that I've written myself, or the year that I played Cleopatra. She has gotten me through so many situations where it's like, I don't belong in this room. Why was I invited here? You know, like these
Yeah.
people are going to realize I'm a complete and utter fraud. And I won't walk in there and be like, I am a queen. They
Yeah.
are lucky to be here with me. And it helps. I'm telling you, it helps.
I love all that. That's awesome. Uh, I mean, are you at a point right now in your career where this pivot is a welcome pivot, or do you feel like there's some things left undone in what you were doing before, like acting and making films and things of that nature? I know you're still actively out there somewhat, but I'm curious if this kind of going this direction and riding this wave that you've been riding for the last year and a half or almost now, well, 4 years now, 'cause going back to 2020. I mean, are you okay if that's where it goes, or do you feel like there's still so much you've untapped with your acting and filmmaking aspects?
That is an interesting question because you use the word, it's such a specific question that I need to be careful with how I answer because I don't want to mislead you. Because yes, there's definitely things that I have not accomplished yet,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say that I feel regrets about
Mm.
what I haven't done acting wise
Sure.
or filmmaking yet. Like I feel like I'm just getting started with filmmaking,
Yeah,
and
I understand.
this doesn't feel like it's going to prevent me from going further in that direction because I directed my first short film, but I haven't even taken it to festival yet.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm still in the beginning stages of that part of my career. I will say that, you know, like I mentioned earlier, I really was hoping my fiction would be out there by now, but
Mm.
it's a long, long journey. It is definitely a marathon. And there was more of a market for this right now. That's just the way it goes. And as far as acting, I don't feel like it has prevented me from participating in things.
Mhm.
If anything, I feel like acting sometimes gets in the way of my writing projects because once you get a role, that you know, I have to focus on that. It's really
Sure.
difficult to juggle both.
Especially if it's
And
on stage, right?
oh, definitely, 100%. That can take over your entire life. There's so much work to be done behind the scenes when you're doing a play.
Yeah.
It is weeks and weeks and weeks, sometimes months of rehearsal, and you have to know the entire play inside and out. It's not like when you're doing a movie or a television show where you just need to know your scenes. You need to know the overall project and you need to understand it, but you don't have to be off book before you can even begin filming. You just need to know your scenes for each day, and then you should be familiar with everything, but you can review the preceding day or even earlier that day what you've already learned. But you don't get review time when you're in a play. You need to already know all of it. And I'm the kind of person, I'm off book in rehearsal. I need to be that on point. If I mess up in rehearsal, I'm really, really unforgiving of myself, because I feel like, how are we going to get the blocking done if I'm holding a script?
That's interesting, because that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
It's just who I am. There used to be a joke in the Shakespeare community here that I showed up for rehearsal, or not rehearsal, the audition off book. Like, they used to tease me, like, "Oh, she's off book for the whole play." And like, okay, that's a lot of pressure to actually be off book for the entire play. But that's what makes me feel prepared. I'm not saying everyone else needs to do that, but that's what works for me.
JD's here and he says, "Hey, haha, slay queen." And sometimes you need that self pep talk. And how many pivots do we need to
do? Thank you.
Yeah, it's just interesting because, like, you've cultivated a really powerful persona out there for a lot of people who know you. And a lot of people you're right. It sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like that's where most of it comes from. But I just it is interesting to me, because I think I've seen some of your work. I've seen, on film and camera and on stage stuff that I've seen on YouTube that I've managed to see over the years in talking to you and getting to know you. And it does seem like every time I see you, something else new gets incorporated into which is the evolution of an actor for the most part, right? But has going into the direction of directing and producing, you said you just completed a first film. What has that done for your process as an actor? Do you feel like you're much more were you more comfortable directing than acting, or did you feel like just enhances it and it's just a different muscle that you were using when you were directing? I'm curious what the directing did for you as an actor.
I'm fairly comfortable doing both. It is a lot more work to direct.
Yeah.
it just is. I was so tired of hearing my name the first day on set. I went to bed with my name echoing in my head because everyone needed me for something. And that's just the role, Yeah. You have to deal with it. It sounds like a burden, but it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Whereas acting, you just need to know your job and be ready to do it when the entire rest of the team is ready for you to do it. I won't go so far as to say it's easy. It's definitely not easy, but there is so much less pressure on an actor than a director.
Yeah.
Because you have one job as an actor. As a director, you have multiple jobs, and you need to understand the mood and the emotions of everybody else on set. It's not just you show up and you direct the scenes. It's not just that. You have to make sure that your set is run properly, and you need to make decisions about lighting, and do you like this camera angle, and is this person okay, and is the food, you have a team to help you with this.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately you who has to make sure that these things are happening. So, and I'm a very hands-on person. I like to know. I'm not the kind of person who's just like, this person will handle it and I don't need to worry about it anymore. Even if that's the case, maybe not worry, but I still want to be informed. I need to know for sure.
People, there was an interesting interview with Hitchcock once where they were talking about, where does he come up with these demented ideas? And he goes, well, you should listen to me when I'm alone and on a set. If I have time within my own brain, that's the more scarier Hitchcock.
Yeah. You don't want to get in here.
Right. He preferred people needed him for other things to get his mind off of what he was actually doing, because it's scary to be inside that brain, right? So
But none of these are complaints. I'm just
no,
saying that
absolutely,
it's
yeah,
less
you're right.
challenging to be an actor because there's a lot less pressure and you can just
Sure.
focus on your one job. I mean, that is why I was not an actor in my own film. It was, let me just figure out what I'm doing with this tiara. You know, I feel like I wear different tiaras. I don't like to say hats. That's boring. Why be basic when you can wear a tiara?
Would that be the next evolution for you then, is to act in something that you're directing?
I have written something that I would like to be able to do, but you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I need to finish this one first
Yeah.
before I start the next one. But that is my goal, is to be able to act in something that I direct.
I have a feeling you're somebody too that needs to feel some sort of mastering or some sort of comfort with that you've got a handle on it before you tackle something new. Is that fair to say?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I will admit that perfectionism is paralysis. Like you get paralyzed because, well, if I do it the first time and it's not perfect, then I'm a failure, which is ridiculous. I am aware. That's still it is still a thought, you know.
Absolutely. JD has a question for you. He wants to know, are there any particular ways where you achieve flow for writing and creativity, the creating that is unique or different? Yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, showers, exercise. Anytime my brain kind of is at rest, that's where so many ideas
funny
come.
You say that. Like when I was going to the gym regularly in the mornings, right after I got done working out, I would come up with ideas or a dialogue in my head and had nothing to write it down. And I was like, well, maybe I should, keep a pen or paper in my car. And then I was thinking, my brain was going so fast. So I started dictating on my phone. I had
that's what I do.
And
that is exactly it.
Yeah.
But something else. Okay. Talking about how that perfectionism sometimes paralyzes me. I am working on a new project right now, and what has it's historical fiction, which is the first time I've ever written that. And you keep coming across these snags, like, I don't know what this is called, or I don't know what material this would have been. And so I'm trying to put all of the setting details in my first draft, which it doesn't need to be in the first draft. I kept getting in these research rabbit holes where I would stop and go do and affecting like how I am writing it, because it is a period piece. So I need to make sure that the sentence structure makes more sense for characters of this day and age. And stop. I started dictating it on my computer. I'm just saying the words to my computer. And guess what? That is cutting out all of that self-editing time. I get the words out, and then I'll go and read it and do quick revisions on it. It's not like it's garbage, but it's very helpful.
Says, welcome to historical fiction. It's all research rabbit holes. It is.
Yes, it is. And I have to set aside time for that. It's like I will schedule or block off time where I'm just looking up these things.
Yeah. I love that idea about dictating. I also find, for me, I think for me as a filmmaker, my most valuable tool is the table read. The table read is the absolute greatest thing ever invented. And it doesn't necessarily
because you hear other people reading it, and it's like you knew what you meant, but if they're reading it and it doesn't make any sense,
or they do the opposite, which is surprise the shit out of you that they got the not only did they get the subtext, but they got the context, and they change it based upon their reaction of being the character, which I find.
But then it works. It works when you do that.
I just find that just to be fascinating, that whole process. And so I table read my own manuscripts when I'm writing, because I feel like listening to even if it's just me talking, I find obviously I find tons of mistakes, because I'm like you, I just spit out shit and hope that the grammar fixes itself at some point, because I don't like fixing that, but I end up doing it anyway.
Oh, I love editing. I do. That's my favorite part, is editing the already finished draft. But because then I'm making it better.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm doing it initially, I know that I'm putting out stuff that's not perfect. And I never think it's perfect, but at least when I'm improving it, that is just more joyous to me than putting down things that I know are not right. But then there's also when the character gives you something and you're like, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just writing this. You know?
I was just going to say, Tonya, when it comes to rewriting, I'm megalomaniacal. I will rewrite the whole fucking thing if I think it doesn't work at all, and not even bat an eye about deleting it. And that drives a lot of people crazy. People are like, "Why don't you just save this part or this part if you know this part works?" Because it's not all working, and that's the problem for me. I have to have it all working in order for that part to be part of.
Hey, that's your process. I need to compulsively save in an out file. Like I just need to know that it's saved somewhere, even though it's saved in all of these backup copies. But
I'm curious how many times you go back to that out file, though. Do you go back there a lot?
I have. Yeah. I definitely have, because there have been times where it's like, didn't I have something for this? Maybe it works better here, or it's a completely different book, and I took this out. Maybe it can work here. That kind of thing. I just have to adjust the dialogue.
Yeah, that's where that's the value. But I figure if it was that good, and that I would remember it anyway, right? So that's why I don't keep a hold of it. That's just
whatever works for you, man.
Yeah, yes, we the deleters are terrifying to other authors.
Hey, as long as you're not deleting my words, write however you like.
But yeah, I mean, I found that's very, and I also found, being a director, it's interesting because I think the aspect of writing and then editing, right, and then being an editor and then being a writer, 2 different jobs, 2 different muscles, 2 different approaches. But I think incorporating both of those skill sets, for me, when I really felt like I became a director, when I really felt like I was actually directing stuff, is when I started taking acting classes and improv classes and learning what an actor goes through to get to their process, and having that knowledge, and then taking courses about camera and things of that nature. I mean, I find that education does help me quite a bit in learning those jobs, but I really have to be doing those jobs to let it sink in. I'm not a bookworm per se, but do you find that is true, that when you compartmentalize to different jobs, that you all of a sudden are better at the other jobs because just by osmosis, because you understand their process and that process?
100%. I was a way better director because I had been an actor first. And I'm not claiming that I was brilliant or anything, but I was definitely in tune with what the actors are feeling. I'm not going to put them through some situation that I feel for them as an actor. I can definitely empathize with their situation. And sometimes you're being asked to do something that just doesn't sit right with you. So, okay, let's talk through it. What do you need from me? This is what, it's a collaboration when you're making a movie. It's not, well, I wrote these words and I'm the director, so you have to perform them. No, that's not how it is. Like, I had a nude scene in mine, and it was ridiculously cold where we were filming. Like, and it was supposed to be, it was a short story when I wrote it originally, so I could have all of the weather and all of this atmosphere and stuff. I never thought it was going to be a film. But then when you translate to film, and you're like, wow, now I'm asking these people to be naked in the woods on a very cold, windy day, while we're
now you know why there's such a thing as sound stages in the world, right?
Yes, but it's a little more challenging to afford that on an indie budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't usually get that on your first go.
That's true. I mean, and it's, what's even more difficult on an indie budget is to recreate it somewhere else, right? Because then you have to get all the foliage and all the the atmosphere look like, and it never looks like that, like it should, right? So
I'm very grateful. I think that my film looks amazing. It's not done yet, but the look, because my DP did amazing work, and then the team of people lighting it, they did a great job. I can't take credit for it, but I still think it looks amazing. I was very, very blessed. We had really great cameras because people offered them to the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I will not say that it doesn't look great, but I will say that there were challenges, like, you know, the sun is coming up and it's a vampire film. What do we do? You know, we've been out here all night. How do we fix this? And
how do we block the sun?
Right, you know. And the thing is, with that scene, I had to make a decision that, you know what, it doesn't have to be naked. That's not what the point was of the scene. We need to convey what the scene is telling the audience and what the scene is doing for the characters. And I don't feel like they need to be undressed to do that. So let's not exploit the actors who are trying to do what is asked of them. No, I want them to be healthy and feel safe, and I'm not doing that to them.
I love that. Going back to what you're doing now, do you feel like you have another 52 in you? Are you looking at possibly doing some more with this? Or let me put it this way for the audience of 52 Love, for the people who experience 52 tips and do all the things that you're talking about, right? And I know not all 52 are going to apply to every single person every single day, right? But I mean, we hope that's the case because that's what the gimmick of the book is. That's what you want from people.
Here's the thing. It's not about the tips. Mm-hmm. I could throw away all 52 of these tips and put in 52 new ones. It's really about the journey of being willing to explore 52 weeks of trying to improve intimacy with your partner. The fact that you are going through the effort. I have not written 52 brilliant ideas. You know? And I'm not saying they're not brilliant, because some of them are, but I won't take credit for them, because I just told you I took them from my life, from other people's lives, from my characters' lives. I was just perceptive enough and diligent in collecting them in one place. Mm-hmm. But it's about the journey of actively working toward this, of using love as a verb. It's not about the tips. And so it doesn't really make sense to write another 52 tips, because if you need 52 more, then you miss the point of the book.
I love that.
However, there is a sequel to 52 Love, which there are going to be 4 short story collections where established authors are using characters from their stories that are already out in the world, using those intimacy tips as a writing prompt for their characters. So you get to see some of your favorite characters from books using these tips and just get a little short story out of it.
That's awesome. I love that idea too. That's fantastic.
I can't take credit for that one either. That was Mel Walker. Go check out his books. He was a fan of the series. We met at a Romance Slam Jam, which is a writing convention for romance writers. And he started paying attention to the blog. He ended up even being a guest on the 52 Love podcast. And at the end of the year, he sends me this congratulations. And then, how about this? How about this idea? And it's like, what? I thought I was done with this. But it was a great idea. And I pitched it to the publisher and they're like, we love it. Let's do it. And of course, it's in first edition because it was his idea.
Do you have a favorite tip?
Do I have a favorite tip? I have a few favorites. I really like reading to your partner. I think that is so sexy and intimate. I like writing a poem to your partner because it's not about it being a well-crafted poem. It's about taking the time to just think about the things that you feel for that person and how they make you feel, and expressing it to them, because it's very vulnerable to do something like that. I also like praying together or meditating together if you're not someone who prays, because that too, doing something like that, it's about that mutual vulnerability and being exposed to each other, and then the safety that you feel with each other when you're doing it. You have to get through the awkwardness, and you can talk, the book shows you how to get through it. Don't expect it's going to be perfect in the first 10 seconds. You have to get through the awkwardness to get to the real sweet spot, which is, kind of like sex, right?
Yeah. I find that one particularly fascinating because there is an element, I think, that when you're in love with somebody, where there's opportunities to just have moments of silence. And
Mm-hmm.
meditation really brings out this really deep silence, and being in a presence of somebody and being okay and being comfortable in that silence. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's something incredibly intimate about that is beyond intimacy in a lot of respects.
Yes.
So I love that idea. So awesome. And tell I'd be remiss because I am indirectly helping you get the word out about this, not today but beyond today, by putting out these live events that you're doing, and talk a little bit about those and what those are about for people, who so that people can come and take a look at what you're doing, because you're doing one every single month throughout
Yes.
this year, and what they're about and why you're doing that.
So 52 Love is one intimacy tip per week for an entire year. So in a sense, it's a calendar project. Well, I happened to come across two other authors. One is Richard, sorry, he goes by Rick. So I sometimes have trouble. I say the wrong name sometimes, but he has this story called Gay All Year, and his is 12 short stories, one per month, where it's just a romantic story of characters meeting and falling in love. And it's 12 of those. So it's really, really cool the way he does that. And he incorporates a holiday for every month of the year. So that's a calendar project. And then there's Hadley Radine, who does the Bachelor series, which is it's a whole series of books, which is one Bachelor of the month per month. So hers is it's 12 books, and then 13 if you count the prequel to it. We both have these calendar projects, all three of us have these calendar projects. So we decided to do a series called Time with Love. So once per month, we do a live event. We give away freebies. Sometimes it's gift cards, sometimes it's books. And we do a different thing every month, so that we're doing trivia this month. Just to get the audience engaged, to celebrate love with us, and, enjoy it all year.
Yeah, the first one was tell everybody your origin love story, which I thought was well, those came out pretty good.
Yes, we're going to be more Valentine themed this month.
Nice.
It'll be the 16th, so please tune in for that.
Yeah, that you can catch that on Tonya's YouTube page. So everybody go and subscribe if you're not already.
I'm actually going to be out of the country for that one, so I will be joining you from London.
Nice, awesome. So let's have a little fun. Let's talk some Shakespeare, because
all right.
I wonder for you, what is it about Shakespeare that you first fell in love with? What is it? What was it that captured you?
It was the rhythmic wordplay. It sounds really good to the ear. Mm-hmm. And then as you really start paying attention to it, he is naughty and so clever. And some of the things that he says,
very funny.
Right. It's like, did he say what I think? He meant it. That was not an accident. They're all double entendres. Okay. Like, everyone is intentional. You can't accidentally say that many naughty things in an alternate way. It was all on purpose. But it's also beautiful. Like, it's just so creative to be able to do that, to be able to twist all of these different words and toss them about, and think about how many different words that we have because he invented them. We wouldn't even have these bits of our language if not for his creativity.
I love that. Where do you find Shakespeare's most underrated? Do you feel like you feel like is it his words? Is it his double entendres? Or do you feel like, his humor? Where do you feel like people dismiss Shakespeare when they're talking about, some of the greater things about, where creation of words and stories came from?
There are people who think that Shakespeare is difficult to understand. And I feel like that's going to be true for any language to somebody. Like, if you listen to people of any generation that is too removed from you, you're going to have challenges. Well, this is a lot more than 2. But I think that if you just sit down and attempt it, you'll recognize that it's not as difficult as you think. I think it's more scary to people to actually start. It's that whole paralysis, right? Like, I'm afraid I'm not going to understand this, so I won't even try. And guess what? It's okay if you don't understand all of it. Just give it a try, attempt it. And there are plenty of places online. If you get stuck on something, look it up. And you might be glad that you did, because then you get both of the meanings, you know? Yes, that was that kind of joke, you know? Talking about his staff. Did he really mean that? Yes, he did. And the other thing is, you know, he's another white man that people feel like has been over lauded, but I feel it's well earned, and he was more of a feminist than people realize. If you read Cleopatra, yes, there are lots of things in there that paint her as a hysterical woman, but if you read the subtext, you see that was all a part of her game. That she is actually in control of all of these things, and he is putting her in a position of power and actually applauding her and what she did and what she was able to accomplish at a time where, you know, there weren't a lot of groups supporting women in charge or foreigners, because she was kind of a foreigner too. Dealing with the great powers of the world and bringing these men to their knees, and not because of her great beauty, because she was brilliant. It was her brain that worked on them. There were tons of beautiful women. There are plenty of women more beautiful than she was.
Yeah.
That's not why she was in such control.
And her guile too. I mean, there is a sentiment out there that, you know, Cleopatra was really focused because the men in her life, the people she put that she trusted or supposedly trusted, which I think she only trusted one person, and that was herself. But we can have that conversation 1,000 times over. But I believe, you know, there's the thought out there that, you know, the people that were closest to her, and, you know, that though they were the ones feeding her these ideas, and that she was executing them, but really she was letting them show their vulnerabilities to her, and she would take advantage of that. And she had no remorse about doing that, because it got her to the position she wanted to be in, right? She knew where she wanted to be. I think and she wasn't going to stop till she got there. And that's what I got from
And, you know, she was not going to be taken alive.
Yeah.
I am not going to be your puppet. You're not going to drag me around and show everyone. I'm out. I'm done. And here's the thing. Usually we only hear about the winners in history, right?
Right.
Why do we know her name?
Yeah. Cleopatra was an astute, ruthless political animal. Yeah.
Meow.
Is there a role you haven't played that you would salivate, you know, you would kill your neighbor to play?
I mean, I would bring my neighbor back.
Right. All right, let me be nicer about it. Is there a role, if you could be offered any role, what role would you tell that person you'd like to play? Let's do that. Let's be nice.
I mean, to be completely frank, my dream role would be one that I was able to write myself. But if you're talking about an existing role, you know, because I have these books that haven't been published yet, but yeah, there's one of them that I would love to play her, because she is pretty much what started my entire journey. And I feel like nobody could know her or play her better than I could.
Nice.
That said, if we're talking existing characters, then it's Catwoman, it's Storm. You know, I love these characters, and they have spoken to me for years. I'm a nerd at heart, you know. I love comic books, and I like what they do in their stories. They are both fierce, intelligent, powerful women.
Do you feel like they've been represented correctly in so far, or do you feel like they've
Definitely not Storm.
yeah.
She, and I'm not saying that she hasn't received anything good, but they have yet to get her even close to what she should be given, either live action or in this last version of X-Men. That's the closest. But even that, I feel like they cut her storyline short. She deserves more. She finally has her own line, like her own comic. And it's beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So the comic is doing well, but on screen, I haven't seen the perfect Storm yet. And I have to be honest, I probably wouldn't cast myself for Storm, but I would still love to play her.
Yeah, I find you would probably be like a better, like a Sue Richards or something to that effect. I think you would crush. I mean, I think you'd crush any role you get because you're that astute. But I really feel like a Sue Richards would be something that you would be really amazing at, because
thank you.
There's the nurturing, and then there's the ass kicking that goes along with both of those. That's a cool. That's some of the cool dynamic about Marvel. I think that is missing from DC in a lot of stuff, because in DC a lot of the women are the villain. You know, the really interesting ones are usually the villains in DC, whereas in Marvel the heroes, they have a complexity to them all of themselves. You know, the women especially, they're not they're not one dimensional. They're not, you know, either they're not the toting girlfriend versus the, you know, versus the, I mean, there is some of that, but it's most, you know, the fridging aspect and everything like that. But that was actually DC mostly. But I find that there's a little bit more complexity with Marvel women than there is, you know, opportunity to play a woman that's more closely to who women are these days, I think.
I feel like there was a lot of complexity in Batman Returns. That's my favorite version of Catwoman, and that's not true to the comics at all. Like they really went far off the rails with concern to her actual storyline, but I still like what they did with her. You have one of the most brilliant actresses in the world playing her. You know, I do think that plays a part, because she owned it.
Yeah.
She committed to the role, and it wasn't silly.
Yeah, that's a different one. I would agree with you.
But you must be talking about the more recent DC movies.
Well, no, I'm thinking about just the characters themselves. I mean, even in the comics, though, Catwoman is a villain for the most part. You know,
I don't think she's a villain.
Well,
and neither does she.
True, and that's what makes a good villain. But yeah, no. Do you
think that Poison Ivy's a villain? Because she's trying to save the world.
In her own mind, but yeah. As far as the complexity of Gotham goes, yeah, she's a villain. But but yeah, I think she's a villain. I am curious, is there a Shakespearean role that you would be interested in playing that you haven't tackled before? Is there a role out there that you think in Shakespeare that you would never touch with a million years, but that if you were forced to do it, you would do it and kill it?
I feel like I've been able to play my favorite Shakespearean characters already.
Okay.
I've been Titania, I've been Cleopatra, and they are my favorites. I'd like to play Hamlet.
Nice.
I'd like to do a gender reverse for that. I feel I'm probably too old to play a 17-year-old, but
Othello, maybe. You know, do a little bit of that.
I don't think I'm dark enough for that. I feel like I would be taking a role away from someone.
Fair enough. How about like a Beatrice? Would you love to do that and like be in a comedy of Shakespeare's?
Well, A Midsummer Night's Dream is a comedy.
Yes, true. But yeah.
I actually want to write a sequel to that, to Tanya's Revenge. And I've had it in mind for years because I think they did her wrong in that. And I want her to have her revenge on Oberon and Puck.
Now, if you could direct a Marvel movie or any movie, it doesn't have to be Marvel, it doesn't have to be DC, but any movie, is there a movie out there you feel like you would have a grasp on that nobody would understand better than you?
Ooh, probably a vampire film. There are a lot of cliches that aren't right, and there are things that people think are canon, but it doesn't make sense for them to be canon.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that they got it from Dracula. Well, Dracula walks around in the sun.
Yeah.
So why is that a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Right. There are a lot of misconceptions, and I think I could tell an accurate vampire story.
There's also a lot of subversions that I think are very inaccurate as well in a lot of ways, right? So
yeah,
that would be interesting to kind of tackle that aspect of it too, I think. So.
And I have incorporated some of it in some of the vampire stories that I've done, and some I've actually gone along with what people believe is the reality. It's like, okay, for this world, it's this. But I have multiple vampire projects, and one of them in particular, I explain all of this stuff. But again, it's not out yet.
The sunlight thing is a Hollywood invention, according to Anita. So, and I trust Anita knows
well,
that.
It has a lot to do with Nosferatu, which is know the unauthorized version of Dracula. It's like we'll change this part of it.
Yeah, I also think that it as Hollywood goes, shadows and darkness add a little creepiness, and that's what they wanted to have happen. So they utilize that.
It's certainly scarier in the dark, and we need the so-called villain to have a weakness. But I don't think that Dracula's the villain in his story.
I would agree wholeheartedly that he's not the villain. Yeah.
Oh, good. Then you're going to love what I'm working on now. I'm writing what really happened, because everything that's in Dracula is written in letters, Yeah. You're not going to put the truth in letters because people read that.
Were you doing like diaries or something?
No, what I'm doing is the actual scene. It's a retelling from Mina's point of view.
Oh, nice.
This is what really happened. But, I may have put this in my journal because other people read it. But that's not what really happened. And then she learns a lot of what the others did not put in their journals.
Nice. I love it.
Or why one person in particular did not keep a journal.
All right, I'm going to hit you with one last question, a little bit harder question. What is your creative philosophy? What do you feel like your credo is to live by when you're creating?
Ask it one more time so I can make sure I have it right.
What is your creative philosophy? What do you feel like is your credo when you're creating? What do you feel like you have to have that this is who I am when I'm creating?
And if you had asked this other question, I have an absolute answer. But for creativity, I would say go with your muse. Go where the muse leads you. You can always alter things when you're revisions, but I feel like you have to go where the muse is taking you when the muse is taking you. You have to go on that discovery with your muse. There's a reason you're going down that path.
Do you have discussions with your muse, or do you?
Absolutely, and arguments.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I'm saying I would have saved a lot of time if I had just gone on the journey, then dealt with it. Even some of my characters, like, this is what I have planned for my character, and the character is like, yeah, but I'm not doing that. But it kind of needs you to.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm not. That's just not a thing I would do. Well, great. So
what good are you then? I'm curious what you thought you were going to answer with or what question you thought I was going to ask that you were going to answer with that you mentioned. Because now you got me curious.
Well, I'll tell you the answer is, who does it hurt if you do it? Who does it hurt if you don't?
Okay.
I feel like people should think about that in life, no matter what they're doing. But I don't think that you should, when you're creating, like at the beginning of it, I don't think that you should try to curb what you're writing based on how it might affect someone else. Because I'm anti-censorship. I think you just need to get it out. That doesn't mean you need to publish it as is, but you do need to get it out, and then that will help you explore why is this a thing that came out of me, and what can I do with that? And when you're in the revision process, then you can be thinking, who does it hurt if you do this? Who does it hurt if you don't? Or what can you learn from it? Who can you teach by it?
Sounds like you're okay with writing stuff that you would never put out in public. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think you have to. There's tons of stuff I've written that I would never put out there. Some of it is just, trite. Like my first writings when I first started, I'll go back and read it. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, going back to those ideas that I was talking about earlier that I put on my phone, like 90%, I go, what the hell was I thinking about when I said that? Because I can't do anything with this.
But I think you have to write the stuff that you wouldn't publish so that you can get to the stuff that you would.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great philosophy. Well, Tonya, it has been an absolute pleasure. Great hour. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here to do this with me and to talk about everything you're doing and who you are, and really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find your stuff and everything you're doing so that people can go and check it out, because I think you're going to have a lot of fans from this. So
I appreciate that. And I thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for your comments and questions. And it's always a joy to talk to you. I will do any show you ask me to do as long as it's within my power, because I just enjoy chatting with you.
Thanks. Well, where can people find you? Tell everybody.
I am across social media at Ms. Tonya Todd. My website is mstonyatodd.com. It's under restructuring right now, so be patient with it. I'm in the process of redoing it because I have books that need to go on there now, and I have other projects. It's like, you know what, let's just do a whole revamp and do it all at once rather than adding it piece by piece. And that means that it's a little slow right now, but I promise it's going to be amazing when it's done.
And go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that's where you're going to find a lot of the love stuff, and it's going to be eye-opening. Trust me, you'll enjoy every single minute of it. So check that out.
You can join my newsletter and then get directly to your inbox all the things that I'm doing and where you can find me.
There you go. Do that, everybody. And thank you all for joining me. And remember, that's always time to go indie now. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.
Meow.